The Automotive Development and Production Program, which was finalized in 2018, may have a lot going for it, but some industry leaders no longer see it as fit for purpose. Post its finalization, the sector has been impacted by the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic and evolution of electric vehicles, which calls for a pivot. David Furlonger, editor-at-large for the Financial Mail, joins us for more detail on the need to rewrite government's automotive industry policy. Thank you so much for your time, David. Now, this program finalized in 2018, that was a long time ago. And of course, things have changed since then.
They've changed enormously. I mean, apart from COVID, which you mentioned, clearly we have the issue with electric vehicles because in the days when the program was put together, no one really had an idea of the impact that electric vehicles would have and the pace that they would be adopted. But we've also got a couple of other issues that clearly we've had recession here for some time. The local market has not developed as anyone had expected, even allowing for COVID. I mean, we still haven't come back to pre-COVID levels. But there's also an issue that if you listen to people in the industry, once the APDP, which is the abbreviation, once that was finalized and introduced in 2021, their argument was that the government should have done more to make it work and not just sort of push it out into the water and think it would sail itself. So there is a degree of resentment at the moment that government has not been proactive enough in making it work.
Does that also mean, because you talk about, COVID and obviously the impact that it's had on the economy and a number of things that have actually kind of shrunk the pie when it comes to the economy and electric vehicles? Do you think that also the targets are just too high for, the automotive industry to actually achieve them, considering all the headwinds that the economy and the industry itself is currently experiencing?
They were always stretch targets.
Yeah.
They were always, let's try and get there, but perhaps we won't. But let's have not unrealistic, but let's have difficult targets. Otherwise, it becomes too easy.
Yeah.
But what we're seeing is that we're actually nowhere near there. Now, the APDP is supposed to go to 2035, when the theory is that we will have production here of 1.4 million vehicles. We're not even halfway there. We should be doubling employment by then. We're not even close. We should be seeing more black transformation in the industry. That's not really happening to a degree either. And in fact, with the employment, we're starting to see a reduction in numbers. If you recall, Mercedes-Benz is cutting back. And so Andrew Kirby, the head of Toyota South Africa, said this week that we're seeing the first stages of actual deindustrialization, whereas the APDP was supposed to increase industrialization. So we're at a pretty pivotal point in the industry at the moment.
Does this now also then filter through to the localization drive, where basically that can't be accelerated at this point either?
Well, if you look at the current average, it's about 40%. The average ex-factory price of a vehicle works out at about 40%. That includes labor costs and everything else. The target is to get to 60% by 2035. But talking yesterday to one of the architects of the APDP, Justin Barnes, is saying that if we don't do something drastic, and if we come in with electric vehicles at the current production volumes, we're going to see that 40% going down possibly to 30%, because there is so much less local content in an electric vehicle as things stand at the moment because of things like battery packs. So much more value will be imported unless government offers a much more targeted view of how we should be going about it.
I mean, David, in your note, you also mentioned that Thailand, actually, that, a developing economy like South Africa has actually grown its motor industry, to 3 times the size of our industry. What lessons can we then learn from that?
Yeah, I mean, Thailand came from a similar situation to ours when it started. So we're looking at about 650,000 production. Thailand is about 1.8, 1.9 million at the moment. What it did was it had a very, very clear set of targets. So it said, first of all, we're a developing country, dodgy roads. We want to become a global producer of pickups, of buckets. So its entire initial policy was aimed at becoming a global producer of pickups. Then when it had the numbers there and it had the volumes, it then said, now we want to go into small cars. So it had very, very targeted, and it forced everyone in there. Now it's looking at electric vehicles, but just to give you an idea, I mean, they have 70% local content.
Wow.
Almost all the vehicles they sell there, almost all of them are locally produced. Whereas here, more than 80% of the cars we sell in South Africa are imported. So as an example there, they tell you, if you want to sell cars here, if you want to import them, you may. But within 5 years or whatever the period is, you have to be manufacturing them here.
Oh, wow.
We will offer you incentives to do so. And if you don't manufacture in that time, there will be heavy penalties. You'll have to start paying back those incentives. Here we have very much a more laissez-faire attitude. And so it's worth discussing whether in rewriting the APDP, which I think we need to, we should adopt some of those lessons from Thailand.
Yeah, so policy needs to be clear, certain and targeted. Thank you so much for your time and for your insights there, David. That was David Furlonger, Editor-at-Large for the Financial Mail.